The day my mortgage application was flat out rejected for a house I had saved 7 years to buy, the loan officer didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me like I was a criminal. I sat in a glass-walled office at First Colorado Credit Union in downtown Denver, holding a folder neat enough to showcase a decade of discipline. I was 29 years old. I worked as a senior project manager at a logistics firm. I picked up extra consulting shifts on weekends, skipped vacations, and cooked every single meal at home just to build a solid down payment. My budget spreadsheet was flawless. In my mind, my credit score was a spotless 780. The loan officer, a quiet man named Marcus, pushed a printed document across the mahogany desk. His fingers hovered over the top page without letting go. "Ms. Carter, I'm sorry," he said. "We can't move forward with this pre-approval. Honestly, given the active collections under your name, I'm surprised you thought this application would pass." My heart did a strange, cold flip in my chest. I laughed, assuming it was a simple mix-up with someone who shared my name. I told him there had to be an error. I had one credit card that I paid off every Friday like clockwork. I had never missed a single payment in my life. Marcus didn't smile. He turned the paper toward me. "Your credit score is 512, he said quietly. The room suddenly felt weightless. I stared down at the black ink on the page. The numbers made no sense. There were 4 credit card accounts listed under my Social Security number, all of them maxed out and written off by collection agencies. Even worse, there was an active personal loan for $45,000 taken out 6 years ago. It had gone unpaid for 8 straight months. My hands started to shake, but I forced my voice to stay level. I pointed at the top line and told him I had never opened an account with that bank in my life. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair. He looked at me with a mixture of fatigue and caution. "Someone opened these accounts using your full legal name, your Social Security number, and your date of birth," Marcus explained. "And these aren't recent accounts. The earliest credit line was opened 12 years ago. 12 years ago. I was 17 years old." I slid the paper closer to my eyes, scanning the fine print beneath the defaulted loan. I looked for the mailing address tied to the original application, desperate to prove to Marcus that a stranger in another state had stolen my identity. Then my eyes hit the bottom line. The address listed for the $45,000 loan wasn't a random apartment in a city I had never visited. It was the blue 2-story house on Oak Street where I grew up. My breath caught in my throat. The primary phone number attached to the fraudulent account was still saved in my phone under a name I called every Sunday morning. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. I stared at the screen, my mind racing through every holiday dinner, every proud smile, and every time my mother had praised me for being the independent one in the family. I slowly dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered with a warm, cheerful tone. "Hey sweetie," my mother said. "How did the home offer go?" I closed my eyes, but what I heard in the background of her living room stopped me cold. In the background, over the hum of the television, I heard my father laugh. It was the same easy, careless laugh I'd listened to my whole childhood. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice completely flat while staring at the paper on Marcus's desk. "I'm at the credit union. My mortgage was denied because of a $45,000 loan tied to the house on Oak Street. Do you know anything about that?" Silence fell over the line. The background chatter from the TV suddenly cut out, as if she had grabbed the remote and muted it in a panic. "Elena," she began, her tone shifting from cheerful to instantly cautious. "Where are you right now? Are you alone?" "I'm sitting in front of a loan officer," I replied. "He's looking at 4 maxed-out credit cards and a defaulted loan under my name." Mom, the primary phone number on the file is Dad's cell phone. I waited for her to act surprised. I waited for her to gasp, to curse, or to demand to know who had done this to her daughter. Instead, she let out a long, slow sigh that sounded more like annoyance than guilt. "We were going to clear that up before you started looking at houses," she said softly. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." The air left my lungs completely. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She spoke about a stolen financial identity as if it were an unpaid utility bill she'd simply forgotten to settle. "You used my social security number?" I asked, every word carefully measured. "I was 17 when the first card was opened, Mom." "That's fraud." "Don't use that tone with me, Elena," she snapped, her voice tightening with defensive anger. "We're your parents. Everything we did was for this family. Your father's business was struggling back then, and we had to keep a roof over your head. We did what any good parents would do. By ruining my credit before I even turned 18? You have a great job," she shot back. "You make good money now. You can handle a bump in the road. We were always planning to pay it all back once things smoothed out." Things had never smoothed out. For 12 years, while I was taking on extra shifts, working late nights, and saving every penny to build a life, my parents were quietly borrowing against my name to fund theirs. Across the desk, Marcus watched me in silence. He didn't interrupt. He simply slid a small white card across the table. On it was the phone number for the credit union's fraud department and the local police precinct. I looked at the card, then back at the credit report. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I need you to come to my apartment tonight. You and Dad." "Elena, don't make a scene out of this," she said. "We're family. We fix things internally. You don't involve strangers in family business." "Tonight," I repeated, and hung up the phone. I thanked Marcus, took my folder, and walked out into the bright Denver afternoon. My mind wasn't spinning anymore. The initial shock had hardened into a quiet, chilling clarity. When I got to my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and pulled up my official credit reports from all 3 bureaus. Page after page populated on my screen. It wasn't just 4 cards and 1 loan. As I scrolled down to the detailed report from Equifax, my heart dropped into my stomach. What they had done went far beyond keeping a roof over our heads. The Equifax report revealed a total of 7 distinct credit lines opened between my 17th and 27th birthdays. There was a $12,000 personal line of credit used 6 years ago, the exact month my parents bought a brand new camper van for their summer road trips. There were 2 retail credit cards maxed out at department stores, and a home improvement loan taken out 3 years ago to remodel their kitchen. They hadn't used my identity to buy groceries or keep the lights on during a family crisis. They had used it to finance a lifestyle they couldn't afford, dumping the debt onto my shoulders while I was eating cheap ramen in my college dorm that I spent the next 3 hours organizing every statement into a single binder. I printed out the application dates, the delinquency notices, and the street addresses attached to each account. I created a chronological timeline of every dollar stolen from my future. If you've ever had someone you love look you in the eye and pretend to care while taking away your future, let me know in the comments. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my mother and father standing on the welcome mat. My father was holding a plastic grocery bag filled with my favorite bakery cookies, a cheap offering meant to soften the blow. He gave me a tight, forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, kiddo," he said, stepping past me into the entryway. "Let's sit down and talk about this like adults." They walked into my living room and sat together on my sofa. I remained standing near the dining table, resting my hands on top of the black binder I had prepared. My father leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Look, Elena, your mother told me what happened at the bank. We know you're upset, and honestly, we get it. The timing is bad. But you need to understand the big picture." "The big picture?" I asked quietly. "Yes," he said smoothly, using the same persuasive tone he used on his sales clients. "Family is a team effort. When you were younger, we sacrificed everything for you. So when things got tight, we leveraged what we had to keep the family afloat. It was a temporary measure." "Dad," I said, opening the binder and placing the first page in front of him. "You bought a camper van under my name while I was working 2 jobs to pay my college tuition." My father didn't flinch. He glanced at the page and waved his hand dismissively. "That van was for family trips," he replied without a trace of shame. "You came on those trips, didn't you? You enjoyed yourself. It wasn't just for us. It was for everyone." "I was 23 and didn't know I was paying for it," I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "You defaulted on a $45,000 loan 8 months ago. That defaulted loan ruined my credit score and cost me my house today." My mother sat up straight, her eyes narrowing. "You didn't lose a house, Elena," she sneered. "You're 29. You have plenty of time to buy a house. Right now, you need to think about your parents. If you try to challenge those charges, you're going to destroy this family over a paper mistake." I looked at both of them, seeing them clearly for the first time in my life. There was no remorse. No apology. Only entitlement. "It's not a paper mistake," I said softly. "It's identity theft." My father's calm demeanor vanished instantly. He stood up, towering over the coffee table, his face turning red. "Don't you dare use that word in this house," he shouted. "We raised you. You owe us." I didn't step back. I looked him dead in the eye, picked up my phone from the table, and tapped the screen. "I don't owe you my life," I said. "And what I do next isn't up for negotiation." My mother's eyes locked onto my phone screen, and the blood drained completely from her face. On my phone screen was a draft email addressed to the fraud departments of all 3 major credit bureaus, along with a PDF attachment of the paper trail I had built over the last 4 hours. "What is that?" my mother asked, her voice cracking for the first time. "It's a formal dispute of every single account," I said, keeping my voice entirely controlled. "I am submitting affidavits stating that I did not open these credit lines, I did not sign those applications, and I did not authorize anyone to use my information." My father took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "If you submit those disputes, the banks will investigate," he growled. "They'll look at the signatures. They'll look at where the funds were transferred. They'll trace every single dollar straight back to our checking account, Elena." "I know," I said. "Because that's where the money went." "They will arrest us," my mother panicked, standing up so fast she nearly knocked over the coffee table. "Is that what you want? You want to send your own mother and father to prison over some credit score? After everything we did for you?" "I am not sending you anywhere," I replied smoothly. "The decisions you made 12 years ago did that. I am simply telling the truth about my own life." My father stared at me, realizing for the first time that yelling wasn't going to break me. I wasn't the intimidated kid who used to hide in her bedroom when money got tight. I was a grown woman standing in my own apartment, holding the legal rights to my own name. He changed tactics instantly, softening his voice into a desperate plead. "Elena, please," he said, taking a step back. "Listen to me. Just give us 6 months. We'll take out a debt consolidation loan, clear your name, and take the hit ourselves. Just don't file the police report. If a police report is attached to those disputes, it becomes a criminal matter. A debt consolidation loan? I asked, looking at him with genuine pity. Dad, your credit is already shot. That's why you used mine in the first place. You don't have 6 months of credit left, and you know it. My mother sank back onto the couch, putting her face in her hands. You're heartless, she sobbed into her palms. We gave you a childhood, and you're throwing us to the wolves over numbers on a screen. You took my adulthood before I even got to live it, I said. I am giving you 24 hours to call those lenders yourselves and admit what you did. If you don't, I file the formal identity theft report with the police tomorrow morning at 9. My father sneered, his eyes turning cold and dark. You won't do it, he said quietly. You don't have the stomach to destroy your own family. They gathered their coats in silence and walked out the door, letting it slam behind them. I stood in my quiet living room for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I simply sat down at my desk, saved the draft on my phone, and opened a new folder on my laptop titled Legal and Financial Recovery. The next morning, 8:45 sharp, I walked into the precinct downtown with my binder in hand. I expected my parents to call and beg. I expected a text from my father giving in. Instead, right before I stepped up to the officer at the front desk, my phone buzzed with an urgent text from my younger brother, Leo. I opened the message, and my stomach dropped. My parents hadn't spent the night worrying about police. They had spent the night turning the rest of my family against me. Leo's text was a screenshot of a group chat message my mother had sent to our entire extended family, uncles, aunts, cousins, and grandparents, at 3 in the morning. She claimed I was going through a mental breakdown, accusing my parents of wild, imagined crimes because I was bitter about losing out on a house. She urged everyone to pray for me, warning them that I was threatening to call the police on my own father unless they gave me thousands of dollars. My phone immediately started buzzing with incoming calls and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. How could you do this to your mother? After everything they paid for? You are selfish and ungrateful. I turned my phone on silent, slid it into my pocket, and stood quietly in the lobby of the police department. I felt a hollow ache in my chest, but I refused to let my hands shake. I knew the truth, and the paper in my binder was louder than any lie my mother could type into a group chat. I walked up to the officer at the desk, filed a formal identity theft report, and received a police report case number. Armed with that document, my legal standing completely shifted. Under federal law, a police report attached to an identity theft affidavit forces credit bureaus to block fraudulent accounts within 4 business days while an investigation takes place. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting in the office of an attorney who specialized in consumer law and financial fraud. Her name was Sarah, a sharp woman who reviewed my binder with a look of quiet, professional rage. This is clean, Sarah said, flipping through the timeline I had built. You have the original account creation dates showing you were a minor. You have bank transfers showing the funds went directly to your father's business account. And now you have a police report. What happens next? I asked. The banks will conduct internal audits, Sarah explained. Because the fraud spans 12 years and involves hundreds of thousands of dollars across multiple institutions, the lenders won't just write this off as a family dispute. They will seek recovery from the account holders who actually took the funds. My parents, I said quietly. Yes, Sarah replied. They will likely face severe civil liability, and the district attorney may choose to pursue criminal charges depending on the threshold of the fraud. Are you prepared for that? I took a deep, steady breath. I am prepared to protect my life, I said. That evening, I sent one single message to the family group chat. I didn't argue. I didn't call anyone names. I simply uploaded a PDF of the official police report, along with the bank statements showing $45,000 transferred directly into my father's bank account while I was 19 years old. I added one sentence: "I love you all, but I will no longer carry the weight of crimes I did not commit." The group chat went dead silent. Nobody sent another angry text. 2 days later, as the credit bureaus began freezing the fraudulent accounts, I received an email notification that made my blood run cold. It was a notification from an old credit union I hadn't used in 5 years. Someone was currently trying to access my primary online account. And they were doing it using a password I had never shared with anyone. I stared at the security alert on my phone, my pulse quickening for a brief second before my training as a project manager took over. I took a slow breath, opened my laptop, and immediately initiated a full password reset and multi-factor authentication lockout across every single bank account, email, and payroll portal I owned. The password they had attempted to use was my childhood dog's name followed by my birth year, a combination my mother had watched me type into our old home computer a decade ago. They weren't just trying to cover their tracks anymore. They were getting desperate. I called my attorney, Sarah, and gave her the IP address log and timestamp from the credit union alert. She added it straight to our growing file for the district attorney's investigator. "They're digging their own hole deeper," Sarah told me flatly. "Attempting to access your active accounts while under active federal fraud investigation shifts this from civil recovery to clear criminal intent." Over the next 3 weeks, the silence from my parents was deafening. The barrage of hostile texts from my aunts and uncles completely evaporated once they realized the paper trail was real. The relative who had been most vocal, my Uncle David, even sent me a short, private text: "I'm sorry, Elena. We had no idea." Without my credit absorbing their unpaid balances, my parents' artificial financial house of cards collapsed with terrifying speed. Because the credit bureaus placed an immediate freeze on the fraudulent lines under my social security number, the lenders turned their collection efforts directly toward the real recipients of the funds. My father's business accounts were frozen pending audit. The camper van they had bought 6 years ago was quietly repossessed from their driveway on a Tuesday morning. One evening, my younger brother Leo came over to my apartment. He sat at my kitchen island, holding a mug of coffee, looking exhausted. "Dad had to sell the house on Oak Street," Leo said softly, staring into his cup. "They're moving into a 2-bedroom rental on the east side of town. The bank took most of the equity to pay down the defaulted loans." I felt a sharp, heavy ache in my chest. That blue 2-story house was where I grew up. It was where we celebrated Christmas, where we measured my height against the kitchen doorframe, and where I thought my childhood memories were safe. "I didn't want them to lose their home, Leo," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Leo looked up at me, his eyes dead serious. "Elena, stop," he said firmly. "They didn't lose the house because of you. They lost the house because they spent 12 years stealing from their own daughter to pretend they were richer than they were. If you hadn't applied for that mortgage, they would have kept doing it until you were ruined." He was right. 2 months later, I received an official letter from all 3 major credit reporting agencies. Following the completion of their law enforcement investigations, every single fraudulent account had been permanently removed from my file. I logged into my online portal and refreshed the page. My credit score jumped from a crushed 512 straight back up to 785. My name was mine again. The following morning, my phone rang with a number I didn't expect to see on my screen. It was Marcus, the loan officer from First Colorado Credit Union. "Ms. Carter," he said, his tone entirely different from the stern, cautious voice I had heard months ago. "I'm looking at your updated credit file. It's completely clear." He paused, and I could hear him smiling over the line. "That pre-approval for your home offer?" Marcus said. "It's ready whenever you are." I closed my eyes, resting my forehead against the cool glass of my window, looking out over the Denver skyline. I knew my life would never be the same. The relationship with my parents was forever changed, locked behind firm, unbreakable boundaries. But as I looked at the fresh pre-approval letter sitting in my inbox, I realized something powerful. Love should never require sacrificing your identity, and family should build your future, not secretly borrow it. Choosing yourself and standing up for the truth isn't betrayal. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. Thank you so much for watching and sticking through this journey with me. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the importance of protecting your own boundaries, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful real-life stories. Drop a comment below to let me know your thoughts. I read every single one. Take care of yourselves, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next story.